Wahyo, kesa siki esta nawa. Paskwa winuak. Utatsi mo winua.
The Treaties of Saskatchewan have played and continue to play an important role in our province. It is important that we all remember what was intended by the treaties and how those treaty promises have been preserved. First Nations values, customs, beliefs, traditions, history, and events are passed on through oral tradition. These oral traditions follow strict laws of respect. Information being shared cannot be altered or changed from its original form. This is how the story of treaty has been passed down to today's generation, how the leaders of the Cree, Saulteaux, Nakota, and Dene nations concluded 5 treaties with the Government of Canada. At the time of treaty making, the leaders realized the buffalo were disappearing and their livelihood was threatened.
Ayun se te utna ke kiskaki. Kwa paskwa musto se ke tamagi no. Into I see no.
At the same time, more and more people were arriving in the area of land that is now known as Saskatchewan, and the Canadian government wanted to make sure there was land available. Treaties with First Nations were seen as a way to open up more land for settlement and stop pressure from the United States to push the American border north. First Nations realized they needed to adapt to the newcomers' way of life, so they agreed to enter into treaty negotiations with the British Crown. They were already familiar with treaty making with First Nation to First Nation treaties. They had also formed peace and friendship treaties with the British government long before the country of Canada was created.
At the time of treaty making, as I was saying, in there, they told us that they put peace and in harmony in those treaties. To us, it means in Cree, it's miuitsehtun, huahkuhtun, instuhtatun, stuhtamaun, understanding one another, understanding each other. That's what it means, that peace and harmony to us.
Before entering into the treaty processes, the leaders involved first held a pipe ceremony. First Nations people believed that the pipe ceremony ensured trust and obligation among the people involved. When a person participates in a pipe ceremony, there is an obligation to fulfill agreements and conduct oneself in a respectful, trustworthy manner. To signify the agreement had been made, the government representatives used written documents stamped with a seal to signify the tradition of the Crown. This long-standing European tradition is still practiced in Canada and around the world. The agreements that were made with pipe and paper between 1874 and 1906 laid the foundation for Treaty First Nations people and other Canadians to peacefully coexist. The leaders of First Nations were keenly aware of the significant role the treaty would have on future generations of First Nations people.
Homo tagai tu tamak, hega pig squat tamak, konesku tagai steo, isko pisem saga ste nage, hego ni pipim choage, hote pogonigan kaita piak, kachwasim sunok, kusim noguche, samyat keteo yak, hega moiga kape. The
words of the Crown's representatives also support the idea that the treaties were to be honored forever. Lieutenant Governor Alexander Morris played a key role in the original treaty negotiations in Fort Capel in 1874 and Fort Carleton and Fort Pitt in 1876.
I am a Queen's Counselor. I am her governor of all these territories, and I am here to speak from her to you. What I trust and hope we will do is not for today or tomorrow only. What I will promise, and what I believe and hope you will take, is to last as long as that sun shines and yonder river flows.
The Dominion government, acting on behalf of the British Crown, knew they were obligated by the Royal Proclamation of 1763 to enter into treaty negotiations with First Nations people. Initially, they arrived at the negotiations with the treaty already written up. The treaties on the prairies were modeled after earlier treaties that were negotiated in eastern Canada. The government got control of all the land in Western Canada except for small reserves that were retained by First Nations. The government viewed these as land transactions with the Crown, gaining ownership over lands in exchange for treaty obligations such as hunting, fishing and trapping rights, education, health care, and farming assistance. However, because of the negotiation process that has been recorded on paper and in oral history, we know that the treaties are more than quick land sales. Specifically, oral accounts emphasize that First Nations had a different understanding of the use and preservation of the land. That land was to be shared harmoniously, not owned.
I think the thing that really stands out the most is the hopes and aspirations that were there at the time of treaty, and something new was required, and that, to help them acquire that livelihood that they've always enjoyed in this land. The animals were gone, the buffalo was gone, and a lot of the things that they needed in order to survive were actually beginning to fade, and the need to acquire new tools to survive, were absolutely necessary. We came to the table 125 years ago with a lot of hope and anticipation to learn about these new ways, to learn about a new way of living. We came to the table, with the intention of being partners.
Treaties were between First Nations and the Crown, and the Crown benefited greatly from those treaties, and here in Saskatchewan, of course, those treaties enabled the settlement of the Great Plains and enabled grain farming to take place, so that the non-Indian people of Saskatchewan benefited enormously from these treaties.
I felt ashamed when I was growing up in school, and I felt I was ashamed to be Indian, I was ashamed to be First Nations, and I wanted to be more white because I felt I'd be more accepted into society. And growing up and coming to university, especially at Saskatchewan Indian Federated College, when I first took my first Indian Studies courses, I've learned about the treaties. I realized then that how important my ancestors were at that negotiation, that there was terms and conditions there that needed to be taken care of by both parties and equally shared as a partnership. And that I thought, my ancestors were really thinking. They were very smart people. They were visionist. They were thinking about us, those children yet unborn.
As an old man, I'm always worried about people not getting along with each other. And if we were to fully understand one another, if the non-Indian person was to fully understand us Treaty Indians, and our treaties, they wouldn't look at us as people that cannot earn their living. They would look at us differently.
It is important that we all remember what was intended by the treaties and how those treaty promises have been preserved. We are all treaty Canadians. The treaties are a legacy for all of us.